Hello everybody, welcome to Percussion Axiom TV. I am your host Tom Burritt, and we are back with episode 91 today. We continue with our Behind the Ewazen series in part 3. Please go back, catch 1 and 2. Would make a lot more sense, catch it from the beginning. We're just a couple days now away from my appearance as soloist with the Austin Civic Orchestra. I'm really super excited, and I know there's a couple of you out there at least, and hopefully more. They're going to come out and see the concert. So please stop by and say hello afterward. I'd love to talk with you. All right, so in parts 1 and 2, we've dealt with the more micro levels of sticking and how to deal with this massive instrument. Just smaller issues that are obviously very important. But as a performer, once we take care of all that business, there's one really important task at hand, and that's simply to perform the music and to interpret the music in a way that's meaningful to the listener. And to me, that's my favorite part. That's what it's all about. And that's what really keeps me playing, keeps me motivated, and really passionate about what I do. So that's really going to be the focus today. So hopefully, if you're just an audience member and you don't play the instrument, hopefully you're still with us. You're hanging through all that detail in episode 2. Hopefully there's a lot of stuff in here that you'll enjoy. So today's axiom really has to do with just kind of putting it all together after we have all these details. If they don't sum up to something better or meaningful, or maybe even profound, hopefully, then what's the point? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So we've talked a little bit in earlier parts about the quality of Eric's music. One interesting thing about the piece here, this particular piece, is it doesn't have a descriptive title like many of his other works. His marimba solo, for example, is called Northern Lights, and that puts a very clear picture in our mind. This piece really doesn't have that. That said, the harmonic language and the compositional language is really pretty identical to those other pieces. And so that can help us that's why it's good to know a composer's other work. But to me, this piece has several moods into it, okay? Really, I guess maybe 2. The first lively theme that we talked about in the last episode that should be played lively, somewhat virtuosic. It's in a nice bright key of C major. And then we get into different minor keys with more of a B theme that's much lighter, much, in a lot of ways, the opposite of sort of the A theme. And really what he does is he explores those 2 themes in many different ways throughout the piece. And so we're going to talk about that just to start with today. So the first theme, nice and lively, just to kind of set the mood right away from the top and the joyfulness of the music. You might really, as a performer, just really step into it, really kind of dig in with lots of energy and passion. So here's the opening lick. Okay, so that might be the best way to paint this part of the piece, is to really just make this as big and lively as possible. So then we have a much better way of contrasting to the next themes. Okay, so that's a look at the very, very opening music. That continues a little bit until about measure 49, when we get into, actually 45, we get into a much lighter part of the music. The strings are pizzicato, everything kind of tails back, and everything kind of pulls back from an energy perspective. So to match the pizzicato and the strings here, I'm going to do a few things. The first entrance you have in measure 46 is this nice little... To match the strings there, I'm going to use a stroke that sort of is as close to pizzicato as I can do, which is a real quick, sort of soft. And hopefully as a performer, hopefully as an audience member, you'll see my motions kind of fitting nicely with what's going on in the orchestra. Just a few measures later, we get into the first real statement of the slower B theme of the piece. And what we're dealing with here is a lot of block chords, okay? This music here. It can be hard to, with all the motions of that being so vertical, it can be hard to make that a linear line. So one of the things we can do as marimba players is assign articulations. Articulation is basically, what is the emphasis of a note? It's much more than that, but just in today's discussion, we're just going to call it that. And instead of playing everything with the same emphasis, we can assign certain notes that are more important, certain notes that are less important. And really, there's no indication in the music here about what to do, but you'll see in flute parts, string parts, you'll see much more attention to detail typically than in a marimba part, for example, what that articulation should be. So in my mind, this should maybe be T-da-dum-pum-ta-ta-ti-ta-tum-ti, the eighth notes mainly being slurred or connected to some degree. And so to do that, what we do is we place a slight more emphasis on the first one and then bring back on the second one. So that first note might sound like this. And I'm using a motion, of course, that actually delineates that. T-um-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, and so on. I can't sing and play at the same time, sorry about that. So in the effect of this line, I'll just play this line for you, you'll see that. But the idea is to dia-dum-pum, dia-dia-dum-tum, dia-dum-dum-dum-ti. There actually, in that half note there, Ewazen actually gives us a roll indication, which really helps, but there's no other indication as far as articulation goes in this line. So it might sound something like this, the way that I want to interpret it. And that gives the music a much livelier sense of da-da-dum, maybe the half bar, dum-dum-dum-dee, and that's exactly what the feeling in the string parts is behind me. All right, so that's one example. We're going to give you a couple more here. If we look just a little bit ahead in measure 70, I think it is, yes, that's right. We're back in C major, and we get, not the exact same theme, but a very similar theme. We get eighth quarter, eighth quarter, bum 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 bum. And if I play that really straight, it just doesn't quite work musically. So equal emphasis, if I can do this. And again, that's just very da 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 da, and really not very musical. So what we'll try to do is apply the same method we did in the previous passage here and give it a little bit more length on the quarter note and shortness on the eighth note by emphasizing the eighth note less and the quarter note more. So it might sound something like this. And so on. Again, giving the music a lighter sense of movement, and now the phrasing, our ability to really communicate this line is much enhanced. All right, there's several other spots where this is important. If we look just a little bit further ahead to 92, we get into this bop 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 bop. A lot of eighth notes again. Actually, some awkward movements in the hands to play this. It's very easy to get in this sort of blocking mess here. Really, there's not much musicality in that statement at all. So what we can do is really move towards where the harmonic rhythm changes, bop, 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 beat, up, bop, which is every half note essentially. And that's really how, we hear it back in the orchestra and the ensemble. So it might sound something like this. We continue. That idea continues. And so on. All right, so hopefully you can get an idea there that we're getting da 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 tia da da tia. And you might get a little more descriptive if we were to write this in. Bop bop bop, short short short, D slur, short short slur, short short slur, short short, something like that. And articulation is definitely a topic for a whole other show, but never written, or very rarely is it written in marimba parts. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't actually figure an articulation out, especially when one's not present. All right, so those are the two moods I'm trying to really communicate here. The cadenza sort of gives us both. I'm not going to get into that because we don't have a lot of time in the show, but really I'm trying to paint the difference between those two main ideas in this. All right, I think that's all for today. I hope you guys found this helpful. I want to know what you guys think about this. I love the idea of contrast, right? Two main ideas in a piece, doing whatever we can to separate them as far as possible from each other. Because really, if someone in the audience is going to get some of those interpretive decisions, you almost have to hit them over the head with it. Sorry if that's hopefully not offensive to any audience members. All right, so that's today's show. Thank you guys so much for checking out the series. I hope you found it helpful. The question of the episode is, I'd love your thoughts on what do you rely on most when you're trying to figure out what to make of a piece? Once you do all the detail work or the micro action, what is it that really helps you communicate to the listener? And then for you listeners out there who maybe aren't players and maybe are musicians or maybe not even musicians, what did you learn from this? Is it helpful to have a perspective, both detailed and very general, like we discussed today, about what a performer is thinking? So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.